All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the November 29th, 2022 iteration of the Kubernetes SIG-Windows community meeting. As always, these meetings are recorded and uploaded to YouTube, so be sure to adhere to the CNCF Code of Conduct. For anybody new, that basically just means be nice to everybody. We'll start with some announcements. First announcement, we were kind of just talking about that off camera, but blog posts for 126 should be ready for review today. I think we're just tracking the one for host process containers going GA. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Does anybody else have any announcements? I think, one other announcement is the maintainer track talks for KubeCon EU submission is open. I think that thought it was January 13th or January 17th is when they'd like those to be submitted. So we should discuss and figure out what we wanted to include. I think Brendan had a couple ideas of things to include that were more technical, like do another deep dive into a part of how things work on Windows for folks. I think folks usually respond well to those and enjoy listening to those. Yeah. So does anybody else have any announcements?
We are onboarding a new guy, Prashad, to help with the operational readiness stuff. That's one thing that probably is worth noticing. And for folks that don't know, Chinchi, who's leading that effort, just left VMware. So I'm going to try to help get him up to speed, and he's starting out by figuring out how to set up Windows clusters and so on and so forth. So I'm going to encourage him to say hi in the SIG-Windows room. I'll add that note to the doc, Mark.
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. Feel free to get them to join. Come say hi.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Kind of speaking of that, we can, if there's any new contributors on the call who want to introduce themselves or say hi, feel free to do so. If anybody just wants to say hi, feel free to say like what you're hoping to get out of joining the meeting or what you'd like to work on or what you'd like to see be worked on. Pause for a minute. But no pressure.
Hey, it's Andy here. I've I guess been lurking a little bit in the SIG-Windows, but I guess just generally just interested in all things Windows and Windows containers. I have no idea like what the things are people are working on, but just interested to learn more.
Cool. Are you part of the Slack channel too? That's probably a good idea or a good way to see what's going on.
No, I'm not. If you have any pointers for that, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Does somebody want to find a link to the
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a Slack and it's probably just Slack, Kubernetes, like slack.kubernetes.io. You can put in your email address and you'll get an invite to join the Slack organization. And then there's a ton of different channels. Hashtag SIG-Windows is a good one to start with if you're interested in that.
Yeah, Andy, can you put your email address in the Zoom and I'll send you an invite right now?
Or you could just link him to the inviter.
Oh, I didn't know there was. Okay.
If that got fixed. Yeah, so normally, I think right now we're kind of just in a slow spot because we're after code and test freeze for the current release, but the branches haven't opened and planning hasn't really started for the 127 release. So a little bit just kind of doing odds and ends and cleanup work right now. We'll probably start doing more planning for 127 in the next couple of weeks. But welcome.
I dropped a link to our community page, which has some mailing lists to join and things like that.
Mm-hmm. There's a link to the mailing list up here too, which if you ever want to edit the document, you just need to join the mailing list. Okay, I guess we could start with the agenda now. First agenda item is the blog posts. I didn't realize it. I was a bit confused because it's at first they said they needed a draft review or a draft up by today, by November 29th, but it looks like in Slack they're expecting it to be ready for review. I saw Jay did a quick review of it, but Brendan and I were co-authoring it. I think Brendan did most of the work. Brendan, did you have a chance to look at this anymore?
Sorry, no, it looks like my changes did get pushed, but there's just a bunch of examples in those sections where the to-dos are, which would be nice to have. But I guess they're not like totally essential. I can definitely fill in a bunch of those, but any help there would be appreciated.
I could probably fill in some of these. I didn't check it. Did we link to the YouTube recording for host process containers? I think that would be a good also reference.
Oh yeah, let's do that. I'll do that. Yeah, so it's pretty much just filling in examples and just a review of the main content.
Okay, I know for the user accounts, I believe, let me check.
Some of that's in the docs. Could we just link to the docs for that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna
that's
say
fine.
that. Oops. I'll link to another PR and I guess we can coordinate in Slack, Brandon, about what to do. Yeah, there's in the docs. Let me just put that here. Where is it?
So they're asking all blogs to be ready for review at the same time this time. I thought I remember them doing kind of like a staggered schedule.
Yeah, we can probably talk in the Slack channel. I know the release lead was there and they were asking it. It seems like it's a little bit different this time. In this PR. There's the information about how to set up the user accounts. So we could, I don't know how to link to this without, because it's not published anywhere. But we'll have to figure that out. And then, yeah, I think a lot of this, except for potentially the use cases, is going to be probably just a recapper of what we've updated in the actual docs. So maybe we can just drop some of those. We can highlight like the new functionality that's coming since it went stable. But we probably should highlight some of the use cases. We could pull those from the YouTube video and the KubeCon recording and things.
Yeah, that works for me.
Do you want to take another first stab and push some changes and then I can pick it up after? I don't know how busy you are today.
Yeah, well, I mean, this has to be ready by today, so I'll be working on this.
Okay, I'll be around today to help.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I think Brennan and I will help take care of this. But we'll have people review if anybody else wants to review. All right, does anybody have anything else you want to discuss on the agenda today? Before we started the recording, Jay, we were kind of talking about building an out-of-tree Windows Q proxy based on KPNG. Do you think that if we do that, should we write a KEP or something, or should we just do it or create an issue in Kubernetes?
I think we should just do it. I mean, I think that the direction is that we just would do it because here's why I think it's low risk. I think basically nothing's happening in the kube proxy at this point. it's basically a dead code base. And the only reason that it's so hard to change is because of all the legacy functionality, especially with there's so much logic endpoints, and the old endpoints. And then there's so much stuff with contract and IP tables and caching and, thousands of nodes. That's the biggest question. What happens when you do 10,000 nodes? But we haven't reached any of those things in Windows yet, right? Like really, really, really massive scale optimizations, or maybe we've reached a few of them, but I think it's a much tighter boundary that we'd be dealing with. And we don't have as much legacy because we don't have as many people. Like we don't have people all over the world running Windows kubelets at edge sites with like high networking latency. And we just don't have those things. So, and we have less CNI providers to worry about. So I think
if we do this, where does the WinProxier KPNG code live? Is it still is the plan still to vendor that into somewhere under staging in Kubernetes IO, and we're just going to build out like the boot, like the command, like the command line part of that, or?
So there's two roads we could go down. One is we could basically keep the gRPC functionality of KPNG and say we're going to use this as is. And then we literally could maintain it inside of KPNG if we wanted, all of it. The other thing we could do is we could just make a SIG-Windows kubeproxy repo under Kubernetes SIGs, and we could build a proxy that did exactly what we wanted to. Whether we use KPNG or not is really an implementation detail we could decide on as a SIG, right? That would be really a conversation with the Microsoft folks, I think, of like, do we see the gRPC strategy as strategic? That would be the thing. And so it's like we could rethink this whole thing. And I think the default easiest thing to do would be to just sort of do it in KPNG, because we don't have to make a new repo, and we already know that the logic there is pretty solid because it's working with other kube proxies. And at least there's some community there that we can sort of rely on. But there's just a lot of ways we could think about this, and I think it really depends on who's going to work on it and who's going to be able to have the time. And it's a crazy situation right now. I'm seeing people in upstream getting extremely busy with so many things. So
so if we keep it in just the KPNG right now, kind of, I think the next steps really are probably just like clean up and then building the container images, right? And figuring out, and then I think doing a review of James's proposal for how do we get a universal kube proxy for Windows, and making those changes in KPNG, right?
Yeah. He has that document, and I forgot, and I lost that document that he had sent out. He went through some of the build details, right? In there. Yeah. So I guess we should have a document then that actually says, here's what we're going to do. Right? I guess we should maybe just use James's document, right? And just maybe add a little to it.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine talks about the build and stuff. It's more about we leaked, just because of the way kubeproxy for Windows was designed and grew up. We leaked a little bit of the CNI implementations into kubeproxy, and so mine was really about making sure we remove the CNI aspect of that.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe the one thing, like a brief document that defines, what the plan is, but then also like, how are we going to handle like the different Kubernetes versions? I think that's something that would be one of my concerns. If we moved out of trees, like, how do we make sure that, we're interacting with all the different versions that are supported in Kubernetes?
Yeah.
Usually, like, that's just taking a dependency on all the networking APIs that Kubernetes exposes. So assuming that everything's following the plus or minus one version, I think it shouldn't be too hard to keep, like, there's just going to be like a rolling kind of compatibility, compatibility story for this too. Like, the current releases now are on this API version, so they'll work with clusters, plus or minus whatever one of whatever that API version is. But that is something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, well, the other thing we could do, if we felt like staying in tree was valuable, is we could we could just go out of tree in tree, right? And we could just have our own directory called Windows kube proxy under the SIG-Windows own directory and maintain all our code there. Right? I mean, there's no fundamental advantage to us being under PKG proxy. Is there? I don't think there is. Like, if we just have our own implementation, so there's like so many, it's like I should maybe make a list of the 5 or 6 possibilities and then we should just look at them all. Because I suppose there's like a few different ways we could do this,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes down to how much we want to do it. Because we're not going to get it for free, it feels like. I mean, it feels like the KPMG stuff, we're going to have to build an interface between the gRPC stuff. And so there's just going to be so much time for that to happen. That
How much do we expect that to change though? Because if it's the gRPC interface works today, right? So like we could just, is it going to, are the interfaces going to change a lot, or is it just going to be replaced with, a Golang interface, which is what I kind of thought was happening. That should be, I'm not expecting to be 100%, but should be pretty much a drop in replacement. So.
Yeah, I mean, the replacement is pretty similar to what you originally were working when you were doing your stuff. It's pretty similar to what I showed you then. The only difference is that, there's going to be a couple of extra potential methods to implement. You know what I mean? It'll be something like that. The problem is that everybody who was working on it got super busy. Like Andrew Stoikos at Red Hat got busy. I got busy. But I'll be back in the US next week. And so then the question is like, okay, what's the most efficient thing to focus on? So it's like I should just put the high level options out and then come back to SIG next week and then we can talk about it, because there's like these 5 different things. And I think until each one is written down with at least 1 or 2 sentences,
Yeah, I think we definitely want David to comment on it too.
Yeah, exactly. And because I'm also okay with the idea that, okay, this was an experiment that we need to put on hold and just get back to doing fundamental Windows stuff again. It just, there's so many ways to think about this.
Yeah.
So I
think
need
it'd be
spend
good
more
to
time.
enumerate some of the options too.
Let me enumerate them and then we'll use that as a starting point. Should I do it in James's doc, like as an add-on section to your doc, James?
Maybe we should just make a new one and reference it, because I think everything in James's doc is still relevant for kube proxy. We still, like, the code was mostly lifted out. So we do want to figure out how to remove some of those assumptions.
Okay. New doc. All right. I'll make a new doc that has the enumerated options in it. Yeah, it sounds like a good step forward.
Okay. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for your patience with this whole thing. It was kind of a crazy ride, and now we're in this weird non-deterministic space now. So I'm trying to figure out how we can pull a hero story out of this. I don't know if we can do it, but we'll see.
It's all right. Does anybody else have anything to discuss in the last couple minutes? Doesn't sound like it. So I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks everybody for attending.
All right, folks. See y'all back on.